Namaskara and welcome to BIC Talks, a podcast brought to you by Bangalore International Centre, where we present conversations that move, inform, and encourage discourse.
So I'm going to begin with the most obvious question, which is like you were introduced, you were the head of India's premier intelligence agency, right? Both the Intelligence Bureau and the RNAW. And you were posted in Kashmir, which, as your former boss in the IB, Mr. M.K. Narayan, says in the foreword, has been India's most complex and enduring problem since independence. There have been other problems, but Kashmir has by far been the most difficult situation, difficult problem for the Indian government to solve. And you were from the central government in a state that has always contested, India's control over it, and lots of people have lots of problems with it and so on. And you managed, as you say, to strike up this unlikely friendship with the chief minister and a very, very tall political leader of Kashmir, Dr. Farooq Abdullah, whom you affectionately called Dr. Saab throughout your book. I want to just perhaps pick your brain about how this unlikely friendship even came about. But before you answer, I just have one request. As someone who works in publishing myself, please don't reveal all. Just reveal enough so that people's curiosity is tickled, and after this session, they go and buy the book. So having made that request, I would request you to answer my question.
I thought I should make that request. But anyway, thank you very much, Karthik. Yeah, now you want me to start with how I got to Kashmir and how I had been posted in Bhopal and I had completed almost 4 years. The normal tenure in a field station is about 3 years. So I was expecting a posting back to Delhi when out of the blue I got a call from headquarters saying, would you be willing to go to Srinagar? And I said, let me think it over. But my mind was instantly made up because being out in the field is much better than being at headquarters. So I said, let me call you back. And so it was that I went to Srinagar. And I had to pass through headquarters, of course, to meet the chief, the DIB, who was very kindly, generously written this forward. Mr. Narayanan was the DIB then. And he said to me, just make sure you keep Farooq on the right side. And strangely, this is what my chief minister in Bhopal, Arjun Singh, had also said to me in a different way. He says, if you must go to Srinagar, I've just come back and I don't know why you're leaving, but if you must go to Srinagar, Farooq is the man, the tallest nationalist that we have. Stay close to him. So I had been told that by Arjun Singh, and I was told the same thing by the DIV. And I couldn't sort of figure it out really. So when I came out, I stopped to talk to his staff officer, Ratan, who sadly passed away last week. And I said, Ratan, I thought Farooq was on our side, so what's the problem? He said he is on our side, but Rajiv is very keen that he stays on our side. So I said, okay, let me see. And so it happened that I went to Srinagar. It was a great time then because it was the summer of 88. When we first reached Srinagar, it seemed like a picnic, I thought, we're going to have a ball here now. But lo and behold, on the 31st of July, if I remember correct, the first bombs went off. And then it went from bad to worse to worse. And the winter of 89-90 was a terrible, terrible winter. So during that period, one got to know the chief minister, and it wasn't easy. He's not an easy person to know. He sizes you up pretty well before he admits you anywhere near him, close to him. So anyway, we started meeting each other, and And I remember the second time when I asked him, I said, my wife and I would like to come and call on you. He says, what is this rubbish about calling on me? You come and have dinner with us. So we went along for dinner, Paranamni, and his wife was there, Molly, as he called her. And we sat down and he said, will you have a drink? I mean, that was very strange coming from a chief minister to an intelligence officer who had just taken over in Srinagar. He said, will you have a drink? I said, sir, if you have a drink, I'll certainly have a drink. He said, of course I'll have a drink. So both of us had a drink. And that was the beginning, of sort of getting to know each other. And he told me one thing right at the outset. He said, look, you come here, this is a very important, very sensitive post. Don't tell lies to Delhi. Always report the truth. And that is one thing I learned from Dr. Saab, that, yeah, I think that's very important. Because whatever you think you're doing, there's no point if you're going to tell lies. So time passed, and then in that winter, there was that kidnapping of the Home Minister's daughter. Rubaiya was kidnapped on the 8th of December 89. And Dr. Saab was in London. He was not in the state. And Delhi was really gunning for him. Where the hell is the chief minister, sort of thing. And here we were trying to find the kidnappers and whatever. And 3 days later, Dr. Saab came back. So that was a moment of serious or grave crisis. And it got us once again, closer together. Because I began to understand him better, his problems better. And he began to rely more and more on me. I mean, I remember an evening very vividly. It was the 12th of December, the evening or the night before. These fellows were released and Rubaiya was got back. But I went to see him and he was sitting all by himself. And I said, have you spoken to Mufti Saab? Because in the days that he was away, Mufti Saab, who was the Union Home Minister, was gunning for him. I had never met Mufti Saab. He said, what kind of chief minister do you have? I said, he's the best. So Mufti Saab didn't like me. And I went to meet Dr. Saab and I said, have you spoken to the Home Minister? He said, no, what for? I said, sir, his daughter is kidnapped. He's the Union Home Minister. You must talk to him. And promptly, Farooq picked up the phone and called Mufti Saab and said, Mufti Saab, don't worry, we are doing everything. I'm doing more and we are doing more than I would do for my own daughter and things like that. So that's how it all began. And then what happened was that both of us got the sack together, which is another story. Farooq, of course, resigned and I got the sack. What happened was that there was a change of government and Farooq, he was a very, very smart politician. He knew it was coming. So one day he told me, he said, ये भी मरेंगे और हमें भी मरवाएंगे, meaning the Congress party at that time. Of course, the Congress lost that election in 89 and VP Singh came to power as Prime Minister and everything changed. That's how Mufti Saab also became Home Minister. So after that, sure enough, they were gunning for Farooq. And Farooq had gone and told the Prime Minister and also told his friend George Fernandez, who was Railways Minister, that look, I am willing to work with Delhi, provided Delhi doesn't send Jagmohan as governor. If Jagmohan comes, I go. It was as straight and simple as that. And I was asked repeatedly by headquarters, is Farooq is he honest? Is he really going to quit? Because Mufti Saab had told everybody he won't quit. He never leaves power. I said he will quit. And Farooq did quit. The moment the announcement was made, I think it was the 19th of January and 1990. And the moment the announcement was made, Farooq said, he called a cabinet meeting and he said, I'm resigning. And when I heard of it, I picked up the phone He was in Jammu and I was in Srinagar. I called him and I said, congratulations. You've proven me right and you've done the right thing. So then he got a desperate call from Delhi, from Rajiv, saying that, please hold on. And Rajiv sent Rajesh pilot to pick up Farooq and bring him to Delhi and say that before he actually resigns, let him come and meet me. So he went and Rajiv said, don't resign. He said, thanks for your good wishes and this, that, and the other, but I've made up my mind, I'm going to resign. And he resigned. So that was the end of the story. And when Jagmohan came back, I knew that my time was also limited. They were gunning for me as well. Because Jagmohan kept telling Delhi that this fellow is Farooq's man. So he should go, send somebody else here. This fellow is not reliable. So I was also told, I think it was first week of March, that pack your bags. So I called up Dr. Saab and I said, my successor is arriving and I'd like to bring him and introduce him to you. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm leaving. I've been told. So he said, oh boy, okay, bring him. But before that, come and meet me. And that was an interesting meeting because he spoke very honestly to me that evening. I think I went there at about 4 and my successor came an hour later to have tea with Dr. Saab. And he said a lot of things very, very straight. One of the things which I never forget, and it's in this book also, it's been in, I think, one of my earlier books also. And he said, look, I'm not my father, I'm not Sheikh Abdullah. I haven't got into politics to spend 12 or 13 years in jail, I will always remain on Delhi's side. I don't care who it is. Whichever party, whichever prime minister, I will remain on Delhi's side. So that thought never left me, and that's in the book, that's a part of the book. So now what else?
Now, you mentioned two things, and those are going to be my follow up questions to you. Number one, you said he was an astute reader of men, right? But given his background, I mean, he was a doctor by profession, spent a number of years in England, number of years away from Kashmir, wasn't actually involved in the political rough and tumble, which actually his sister's husband, GM Shah, who they had a falling out, as you mentioned in the book, he was in the thick of things during the 70s and so on. So that is question number one. Where did he get this quality of being able to read men and human beings and size them up? That's number one. Number two, you mentioned that he told you that don't tell lies to Delhi. What does that mean? I mean, what were the lies to Delhi that were being told by people, by your predecessors, perhaps by your successors too? What did he? So, if you could just answer these two questions.
Yeah, I don't think my predecessors, immediate predecessors, at least, and I would say about the 10 years or about 10 years before me, I don't think anybody was really lying to Delhi. What Farooq had in mind was that Sheikh just did not trust the intelligence bureau. So Sheikh Saab wanted actually at one stage, it came to a point when he said, I want the intelligence bureau out of Kashmir. Otherwise, I cannot function. So it had come to that thing. And Farooq had seen it all. Now about Farooq, the politician, and Farooq being this thing, it was in his genes, And he picked it up very quickly. It came to him sort of automatically. And incidentally, although Mrs. Gandhi went on to dismiss him in 1984, she was actually responsible for his being anointed chief minister after the Sheikh. Because the Sheikh was quite ill. He was ailing from a serious heart problem. And he passed away in September 82. So from early 82, everybody in Delhi was thinking about after Sheikh who? Like, there used to be the story after Nehru who? So after the Sheikh who? And then Delhi figured out that, Mrs. Gandhi figured out that there is nobody better than Farooq. He's English speaking, he's been educated there, he's got an English wife, And he's honest, he's straight. That fellow is more difficult to deal with.
GM Shah, you mean?
GM Shah. And so she went and told the Sheikh that, look, why don't you announce your successor, Sheikh Saab, and why don't you announce that your son will follow you? And that's what happened. And ever since then, Farooq knew that he was going to succeed his father. I think it was October 81, that in his first speech as a politician, he said, I want to be the bridge between Srinagar and Delhi. And it's a pity, really, that Delhi never understood the man and never allowed him that to be that bridge that he wanted to be. So that's why he always had problems with Delhi, And he still has problems with Delhi.
So what, in your opinion, is Delhi doing wrong? And what did they do wrong? What are they doing wrong? Why is it so difficult to understand him? Is he asking for unreasonable things? Is he not on their side? Or at least that's how they perceive it. What is your reading of that situation?
Yeah, it's one of those sad stories. Delhi has so many sad stories, but this is a big sad story. But because Farooq, in my view, is not only the tallest leader, by far the tallest leader in Kashmir, no doubt about it. But I think also the tallest, the only Muslim leader in the country, and one of the tallest leaders of any denomination in India. So the thing is that Delhi wanted anybody in Kashmir to be, not only on their side, but at their command, to be pushed around. And Farooq is too big to push, So he always wanted to be with Delhi. But he would never accept be comfortable with being pushed around. That's why the one prime minister he got along best with was Devi Gowda.
Our very own Devi Gowda.
Yeah, your very own Devi Gowda. And Devi Gowda remains a friend of Farooq even now. And because when Devi Gowda was Prime Minister, I still remember, because those days I was very deeply involved with Kashmir. He had a minister by the name of CM Ibrahim. So, because being a Muslim, he thought he knew everything, about Kashmir. About Kashmir and about the Quran or whatever it was. And sometimes when I was to take him along to meet these Kashmiri leaders, once I remember I was taking him to a Maulana, and he started quoting from the Quran. And after we left, this Maulana said, "Ye kaun aaya tha aapke saath?" But Ibrahim was a good guy. So between Ibrahim and Devi Gowda, they figured that Farooq Abdullah was good enough for Kashmir. They didn't need anything else. So there was no interference. There was all the time backing Farooq, supporting Farooq. And that's what he looked for from Delhi. And that never happened. Because Farooq is not an easy guy to understand. I must say this. And he doesn't let you understand him. He keeps you at a distance. There's a thing that, people say he has very little attention span. Some say 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Yeah, because he doesn't suffer fools, If you get him interested in something, he's willing to listen to you. But otherwise, what are you wasting my time for? Now I'll tell you a story about the DG that he had. And incidentally, that DG, Ghulam Jilani Pandit, was the last Kashmiri DG that Kashmir had.
Police.
Yeah, in those days. And after that, there's never been a Kashmiri DG. And Farooq would tell me, he said, and whenever the DG came and he would meet the Chief Minister frequently, regularly, the Chief Minister would address him as General. How are you, General? Come, and this, that. But after the DG left, he would tell me, he says, this fellow comes to me every 3-4 days and only brings problems for me. There are no solutions. I expect him to bring solutions. He says, the last DG I had was such a good fellow. He hardly met me, but he only came to me with solutions. So that's the sort of person that Farooq is. Don't waste my time. If you have no solution, All right, General.
दफा हो जाओ.
सुन ली आपकी बात.
It's interesting that you mentioned that Deve Gowda and he got along, and I'm going to dwell on this because we are here in Bangalore. And Deve Gowda was an unlikely prime minister in some sense. Nobody knew even 10 days before the election that he was going to be prime minister. A combination of circumstances. So he was typically a state politician. Maybe that's what made the difference, that he was not from Delhi, whereas every prime minister we've had, including Narasimha Rao, who was from South India, but was a quintessential Delhi, dyed in the wool, power, I don't know, power, I shouldn't say power broker, but someone well used to the ways and uses of power. Whereas Devegowda came from the state, did not know the ways of Delhi. Is that what made the equation click?
No, you're right, I think. Absolutely right. Also, being from the South, he was not like the other North Indian politicians. Of course, Devi Gowda was a politician. Even in his dreams, he was a politician. And quite often in meetings, the most interesting thing I found about Prime Minister Devi Gowda was that in meetings he would go to sleep and even snore in meetings. But he knew everything that was going on. Once I had taken some Kashmiri youngsters who had been in militancy, and I had taken them to meet the Prime Minister and say that now these guys have given up the gun and they expect support from Delhi. And he called us at about 11 at night. And I was sitting at the back, and there were these 4 or 5 boys sitting in front. And there was Devi Gowda and there was Ibrahim on the side. Every now and then, Devi Gowda would go off to sleep. And Ibrahim from the side would say, Prime Minister, and he would sort of wake up. And at the end of it all, he said, okay, what is it that you want? Tell me, quickly. Don't waste time. So these boys started to say something. He said, yes, I'll ask my Home Secretary tomorrow. No, it's all right, I've heard you. So when we went out of the room, these boys said to me that, why did you bring us here? You should have taken us to the Home Secretary, who was in those days Padmanabhaya. So, yeah, but they got along extremely well. And the thing is, that's the amazing thing with Farooq, that he's a very good friend. And I've said that in this book. And he hasn't forgotten Devi Gowda. My wife and I both were invited for Omar Abdullah's swearing in. And I was sure that Devi Gowda would be there because everybody who was there had been invited by Farooq, not by Omar. But Devi Gowda was not there. So I inquired and they said, Devi Gowda Sahab the. He spent a week here, but he's gone away. So that's how it is with Farooq. If you're a friend, then you are a friend. You remain a friend.
Okay, I want to change tracks a little bit.
These days, maybe I'm a little out of favor.
I'll come to that later, if you don't mind. I want to change tracks a little bit. Now, you said the Sheikh anointed Farooq as the heir, right? And then we've seen the mantle now pass from Farooq to his son, Omar. Perhaps I think the only instance, grandfather, father, and son, grandson becoming chief ministers of the state. But someone like you who's spent time on the ground in Kashmir, what does the average Kashmiri think about this kind of passing of the leadership as though it was a family kind of Jagir, so almost? Do they look at it approvingly or do they disapprove of it? What is your sense of what the average Kashmiri thinks about this?
There have been different phases for this, and of course, if you go to Kashmir and you talk to the Kashmiris, they will still tell you that Sheikh has been the greatest leader that Kashmir had. They'll even say that he's been the only real leader we've had. After Sheikh, there's been nothing. But having seen Farooq over the years, and particularly since 2019, when the abrogation happened, I have come to believe, maybe I'm very partial to Farooq, that he's possibly greater than his father. His father, of course, spent 12 years or whatever in jail. But he had, at that time, he had the Mahatma's support. He had Pandit Nehru's support.
But Pandit Nehru put him in jail.
Yeah, that's a sad story, you know. There are various versions of that story. But it was because of Panditji that the Sheikh and because of the Mahatma that the Sheikh stayed with India. That story is also well known. And even Sardar Patel, who was slightly different, a little more to the right, but they all got along. They all got along well. Farooq has had to rough it out much more. He hasn't been in jail except for being locked up at the time of abrogation, but he's not had it all his way, you know.
So you think the average Kashmiri, I mean, and this is obviously a theoretical
Yeah,
construct,
sorry,
is okay with that.
Yeah, I was going to say something a little more. That Farooq has been criticized a lot, you know, over a period of time. For instance, when the accord was signed with Rajiv Gandhi in '96, that's when the Kashmiri first started saying, "This fellow is a stooge of Delhi. I mean, what business has he got going with Delhi?" But Farooq said, "ठीक है, we have to stay with Delhi." And Rajiv was the one Congress leader that Farooq hit it off with, not perfectly, but pretty well, because they were sort of friends. So he got along with Rajiv. Now he took a great liking to this young boy, Rahul, during the yatra, because Farooq walked with Rahul one day in Delhi, rang me up that evening and said, "Do you know I walked with this boy?" And the way he hugged me after I finished walking with him, he said, "I've never felt so emotional in a long time." So Farooq is also a very emotional person, you know. And what I was coming to actually is that there has been a lot of empathy for Farooq post abrogation because he set up what was called the PhD, which he tried to get everybody together. And I once asked him, I said, "Sir, how will you accommodate everybody?" He said, "Look, forget it. This is not about accommodation. This is about togetherness. And if I have any role in Kashmir today, it is to keep Kashmir together." And he did keep Kashmir together till the elections came around.
And your view of Omar Abdullah?
Yeah, Umar is different, you know. People have laughed at it. I don't think Umar will be very happy with it. But I've said here in the book that Farooq is 100% or 110% Kashmiri. He's 100% Indian. Umar is 100% Indian, but 50% Kashmiri and 50% still the head boy of Sanaa.
Lawrence Khanar.
That's
Right.
why he was head boy. So I don't think Umar will like that. You see, Umar is very straight. You know? In politics, you have to have that, as the Kashmiri calls it, that lachak has to be there. You know,
The crooked element.
well, you call it crooked or lachak. You know,
Mhm.
you can shift.
And I
your-
suppose there can't be a good translation for Lachak, but
Yeah. So Umar is too straight. What I can tell you is that in 2002, Delhi and Prime Minister Vajpayee, I was working there in the PMO, desperately wanted him to be chief minister. But he lost his own election from Gandarbal. And then in 2008, again, Kashmir wanted him to be chief minister, and he became chief minister. So now, actually, it's ironical that Farooq wanted to be chief minister. He told me at least 3, 4 times that, yeah, of course I'm going to be chief minister now. And anybody who knows Kashmir tell you that Farooq was the right person at this point of time. But again, it's ironical that Umar, who was supposed to go to parliament, lost his parliament election from Baramulla. And therefore, when the National Conference got the sweeping mandate, Farooq sort of thought, now it's time for me to step back and let the sun rise now.
that's interesting. Okay, talking about Kashmir in general and certain aspects of Dr. Saab's career in particular, some of which is in the book, one sees or one senses that there have been lots of missed opportunities. I mean, India, Delhi, I should say, could have made good, could have solved the problem, but it did not. And in some sense, Farooq's career, of course, he became chief minister several times, but he was supposed to, at one point of time, become vice president, possibly even president. That didn't quite transpire, and it probably never will. So, in some sense, his career has also kind of mirrored the relationship of Kashmir and Delhi. Am I right in saying that?
No, you're absolutely right. That's why I said that Farooq actually has had a rough time. He doesn't keep too much in his heart, whatever it is, he'll say it. And yeah, he was disappointed in 2002 when they had promised him vice presidentship. And I remember the election was to be held in October, and I was in Srinagar in the summer. And he summoned me to his office. I'm using the word summon because he never ever called me to the office, it was always at home. But that time he called me to the office, sat me across the table and said, "Tell me what's going on in Delhi." That different kind of Farooq. And I said, "Sir, what's going on in Delhi?" He said, "Tell me, are they going to make me vice president or not?" So I said, "Of course they're going to make you vice president. Haven't you been told that?" He said, "Yeah, I've been told that, but I don't trust Delhi. I don't believe Delhi. I don't think it's going to happen." And the truth of it is, and I asked him, I said, I'm privy to what happened in the presence of Brijesh Mishra, which happened at our place over dinner, when Brijesh said to him that, "Dr. Saab, aap Delhi kyun nahi aa jate? Aapko vice president bana denge." And Farooq said, "Fair enough." But then I asked Farooq, I said, the Prime Minister had assured you, the Deputy Prime Minister had assured you. He said, "Yeah, they did, but I don't trust anybody in Delhi." And it's another interesting story because I felt very bad for Dr. Saab at that time. And when I told Mr. Brijesh Mishra, I said, we haven't been fair with Farooq. And he said, "Don't worry, we're going to make him a minister now." So the next time I bumped into Dr. Farooq in Delhi, I said, "Sir, congratulations." He said, "Kis liye?" I said, "I'm told you're being sworn in one of these days." He said, "For what?" I said, "As minister." He says, "Forget about it. Who's going to make me a minister? Get me a house. I don't even have a house to live in Delhi." So it is that kind of thing. That's the way Delhi has been with him. It's sad, it's been unfortunate. But Delhi has been like that with him. And even the dismissal in 84, which was plotted by Mrs. Gandhi in Delhi, and the governor, Mrs. Gandhi's cousin, B.K. Nehru, refused to do it. And therefore, Jagmohan was brought in as the hatchet man to do the job. So that's why, there was never any trust between Farooq and Jagmohan.
You talk about Delhi not being trustworthy, Delhi doing arbitrary things to Kashmir. But I mean, seeing as I'm seeing from southern India, I mean, even South Indians leaders say pretty much the same thing. Delhi treats us imperiously. Perhaps if you go to the Northeast, the Northeastern politicians will say similar thing, that Delhi treats us imperiously. So that's the way Delhi is. It's not about Kashmir really. It's just the way Delhi operates, isn't it? So why special? Why does he need to feel a special grouse that Delhi is treating me this way? That Delhi treats everybody the same way.
That is exactly it. That is Farooq Abdullah. He would not accept it. He would remind you whenever necessary that I am the Sheikh's son. I am not any chief minister. I'll tell you a little story. One day, I got a call from Delhi that the Home Minister, who was in those days Bhutta Singh, says that the Chief Minister has not been to Delhi for a long time. I was told to ask the Chief Minister to visit Delhi. So I went and met Farooq, and he said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Sir, it seems you haven't been to Delhi and the Home Minister is remembering you." He said, "Who the hell is this Home Minister?" I said, "Bhutta Singh." He said, "Why should I go and meet Bhutta Singh?" I go to Delhi and sometimes your Prime Minister doesn't have time for me. I have no time for Bhutta Singh. I'll not go to meet Bhutta Singh. So then I said to him softly, I said, sir, the DIB wants to see you. He says, tell him I'm coming tomorrow.
More regard for the DIB as opposed to the Home Minister.
That's in the book.
Of course, I remember that.
That's in the forward as well.
Okay. Moving tracks now to more recent events. As you say, Article 370 was abrogated in August 2019, right? And as someone obviously who's served in Kashmir for so long, what is your take on the whole thing? Was it a good idea? Was it immaterial? Because as you say in the book, Article 370 had been hollowed out considerably and so on. Give us your reading of the whole situation.
No, I had written against it then. I had spoken against it because I felt there's nothing. 370 was only a fig leaf. So why did you want to deprive the Kashmiris of that fig leaf? But as Farooq explained it, he says, we knew that once the BJP is in power, it will happen. So it's happened. And it's unfortunate that it's happened. And a lot of people spoke against the abrogation. If you remember, our former Union Home Minister Chidambaram spoke very passionately in Parliament, and he referred to it as a monumental blunder. And there were very strong, it called editorials in the newspapers also. So, but it's happened, and then the Supreme Court says it's fair enough, so it's fair enough. By and large, the Kashmiri has come to accept that, okay, 370 is not going to come back. There are still people who will fight for it. But by and large, Kashmiris know that 370 is not going to come back. But what is, again, we come back to that whole business of the Kashmiri dignity or something for the Kashmiris. Now, the government has promised or assured statehood, restoration of statehood in Parliament. So why not do it? I wrote about this when I came back from Omar's swearing in. I said, this is a very, very good time now. It'll be good for Delhi's credibility and it'll be very good for the young Chief Minister's credibility as well. And Omar has been teaching out all the time to Delhi, which Kashmir is not happy with, incidentally. He's gone out of his way to reach out to Delhi. And yet, we don't know if statehood will be restored or not. And people ask me, and my answer to that is, I don't see it being restored in a hurry now.
So what does this Naya Delhi, or I'm using that word Naya very clearly.
Delhi is always Delhi.
No, this Naya Delhi, which has been ruling India for the last 10 years or so. What is their problem with Article 370? Why do they see it as something of an obstacle to Kashmiri integration with India? What is their view?
Nothing. I mean, it has nothing to do, if you ask me, it has nothing to do with Kashmiri integration at all. And this brings me to another question which I'm often asked, that what is our Kashmir policy? And my answer to that is zilch. We've never had a Kashmir policy. What has happened over a period of time, if we go back to 1947 and now we are in 2025, is that two things. One is that we've wanted to get Pakistan out of the Kashmiri mind. And I think we've succeeded to a very large extent. If Pakistan still comes back to the Kashmiri mind, it's only as a fallback position. When the Kashmiri feels that Delhi is being unfair, then where do we go? We have nowhere else to go. And it's that kind of thing. And so Delhi hasn't always been very fair to Kashmir. If you ask me as a Kashmir watcher, and of course people say that this guy is half Kashmiri, he's half Pakistani, they say all kinds of things. But that's the way I feel and that's the way I say it.
No, it's interesting that you mention that you think that Pakistan is not in the Kashmiri mind and heart and so on, given what's transpired in the last few days. the Pahalgam incident, for instance,
Yeah.
which appears to have, I mean, that is the allegation that seems to have been engineered from across the border. And of course, locals were involved.
Yeah,
Given that, how would you?
now we are talking of 2, 3 things together. So let me take them up one at a time. One is the Pakistan factor and the mainstreaming of Kashmir. I think by and large, Kashmir is now pretty mainstream. And if it doesn't remain mainstream, I would say it will always be Delhi's fault. Because Kashmir wants to be mainstream, Kashmir wants to be with India. Now, if you don't want to treat it like the rest of the country, then I think we have problems. Then it's our fault, not Kashmir's fault. And I'll take you back to 9/11. You know, when 9/11 happened. And if you remember, that was the time that Bush read the riot act to Musharraf, that either you're with us or you're against us. And then Musharraf joined the war on terror. So one of the senior Hurriyat leaders said to me, he said, अब क्या पाकिस्तान पे क्या भरोसा करें? ये तो अपने आप को नहीं संभाल सकते, तो हमें क्या संभालेंगे? So it goes back a long time. But there are ups and downs, as I say. Every now and then when Kashmiri feels that Delhi is being unfair, then that's the fallback position. So I'll tell you about abrogation, for instance. And when abrogation happened, the Kashmiri expected much more support from Pakistan. But Imran didn't do very much, you know. Apart from whatever he said in the United Nations, Imran, I think, was very good to us. And his thing was, okay, this is an internal matter, you settle it yourself. And the Kashmiri was very disappointed. The second issue which you just mentioned is terror. Now, in terror, of course, Pakistan is involved. There's no doubt about it. And when I say Pakistan, I mean, Pahalgam has happened now, which is worse than the worst, I would say, because tourists have never been attacked and killed like this. But there is always local involvement, you know. There will always be local involvement. And I would like to remind you that there was a time a couple of years ago when I was really worried, when I felt that terror had now come to Srinagar. You know, there were 3, 4, 5 killings where people were singled out. A couple of them were Kashmiri Pandits. I remember there was a Sikh lady in a school who was shot. So there were killings like this. Now, if terror can come to Srinagar, then it's scary. Because those people who were involved in those incidents were never caught. You know? So, were they Kashmiris? Were they Pakistanis? Were they Pakistanis living as Kashmiris? Nobody knows. So, now terror has not ended. And terror is not going to end in a hurry, as I see it. Right now, of course, we are in a different sort of what we call crisis situation, because what is our retaliation going to be and what kind of retaliation it will be? Well, it's for the government in Delhi to decide. My only thing again is that let the poor Kashmiri not suffer, you know. Now, this is the first time I've seen when the whole entire Kashmiri leadership, the mainstream, the Mirwais who we call separatists or whatever, everybody has joined together to condemn this attack in Pahalgam. I think Delhi should utilize that, make use of it, this Kashmiri togetherness in its favor. It's been very rare that, you know, Kashmiri leaders and the Kashmiri public also, whatever the reasons, I don't want to go into that because, you know, the reasons can be varied. But the fact is, today you have an opportunity. So one doesn't want to hear Kashmiris being bashed up in the rest of the country and also houses being demolished in Kashmir. It's not necessary. It's uncalled for. I mean, if there are Kashmiris involved, and I'm sure there were Kashmiris, you know, then catch them, find them, catch them. That's our job, you know. And it's unfortunately, Omar Abdullah has been so supportive of Delhi here, in the assembly, outside the assembly, everywhere. And law and order is not his control. It's controlled by the Lieutenant Governor and by the Home Ministry. So the Kashmiri says, yeah, we have our government, but it's not our government. It's still run by Delhi.
It's interesting you mentioned that, we have to retaliate or we have to do this or that as a response to whatever's happening. But which begs the question, what is our national security doctrine? How do we retaliate? What are the options? Who are the decision makers? Is there even such a doctrine that exists, even if not on paper, in some kind of thinking? I mean, as someone who's been an insider to all of this, how do you see that?
I don't know what the doctrine is or what the latest thinking is, Our NSA, Mr. Dole did once talk about offensive defense, And I saw somewhere that somebody said, well, that offensive defense seems to have failed. I could never speak ill of my friend because, we work together, we've been colleagues, and I'm a great admirer of his. In fact, I said recently in an interview on this book that I shudder to think that if Ajit Doval was not around, who would Modi have? Because there's nobody else around. I can't think of anybody who could replace Doval.
It seems like a contradiction in terms, the phrase that you just used, offensive defense. How is one supposed to read that? How is one supposed to
You have
understand
to
that?
ask Mr. Doval, but
He's not here. You are. So I'm going to ask you.
No. I think I'll leave it at that. You can interpret it in whatever way you like. Like, Ajit had, to begin with, after abrogation, rolled out what he called his muscular policy in Kashmir. So I think that muscular policy, in all fairness, worked. It worked for a while. And particularly in South Kashmir, where we were having problems with boys coming out to fight. After, if you remember that time when in 2016 when Burhan Wani was killed. So after that, the boys in the South were all, because Burhan Wani in the thinking of the Kashmiri in the South was not just a martyr, but he was more than that, a hero. And I remember talking to boys at that time in South Kashmir, and they said, we don't want independence or anything. Now we are fighting for Allah. So suddenly Allah had come into play. And at that time, I think the muscular policy did help. A little bit of danda did help. But I'm a firm believer that we need to talk, we need to engage, and never stop talking.
It's interesting you mentioned talk, because that was going to be my next question. You have been very closely involved in what are called track to diplomacy initiatives and so on. I mean, at least you have been spoken of as being closely involved with that kind of initiative. Given Pahalgam, given all of this, should we go down that road at all? Should we continue going down that road at all? Is there any point to it?
No, that's a very enjoyable road. I don't.
Personally, perhaps, but in the national interest.
Once our NSA, Shankar Menon was then the NSA, asked me, so you keep going for these track to meetings. What do you think you're trying to achieve? I said, nothing. I go for the fun of it. You meet friends from across, you have a drink together, you talk, and you go on a jaunt. So track 2 is not serious business, not at all. No. I think you're mixing up track 2 with other tracks. Track 2 is fun, really, and it continues. You can wind it up whenever you like. It's like one of those side shows,
So it's of no political relevance.
When I talk about talking, it's serious talking. And that serious talking is what I tried to do all my time in Kashmir, was talking to the Kashmiris, And I would say the same thing of Pakistan, but I dare not say it now because let this Pahalgam pass first. But I am a firm believer in engagement and in talking. I think also that's one of the reasons that Dr. Saab understood me better.
You've called yourself a spook several times in the book, right? What is the life of a spook like? Is it like James Bond? Is it like somebody else? What do you do? I mean, how do you do what you do, and what do you do at all?
Actually, we do nothing. But on a more serious note, it can at times become very lonely, you know. Like I told you about that winter of 89, 90 in Srinagar. Now, every central government officer in Srinagar had run away, had left their post and gone. But we couldn't afford to leave. And you know, we lost 4 officers in the space of 3 weeks. So at one time, I thought my main job in Srinagar is to send down these bodies to Delhi. It was a terrible time. And one day, my office staff, they cornered me and they said, "We want to talk to you." I said, "Come outside." And I said, "What's happened?" They said, "It's very difficult to stay on here now. Everybody is leaving, and we also want to leave." I said, "You can't leave. In our job, you can't leave. And if I can't leave, you can't leave. So don't ask me these silly questions." So it can at times be a very lonely kind of life. And no, there's no James Bond in it. I think possibly the closest you can get to is Smiley's people. But yeah,
But what gives you the strength to hold on in these lonely times?
it's just a job. I mean, you can't run away from a job, and our kind of job in particular, you know, because it's a bit like running away from the front in a battle or a war, you know. So you can't do that, and yeah, and it was lonely because there was nobody in Kashmir, you know. Um, I remember quite a few times I had this colleague from the RNAW who was there, and the two of us would meet, and there was nothing to do except drink. And I remember because the government had changed, the DIB had changed, the new DIB came up to Srinagar after this kidnapping business. Mr. Joshi was the DIB. And so I called him across for dinner. And after dinner or during dinner, he said, "You're drinking a lot." I was, you know. And I said, "Sir, there's nothing else to do here. I mean, I could get away with it because it was Mr. Joshi. Mr. Narayanan would not have accepted that as an answer." But Joshi Saab was a more easygoing sort of person. And he said, "You need to look after yourself." Anyway, I didn't stay in Kashmir very much longer. And in fact, let me tell you quite honestly, before I end, that when I was, I would say, booted out of Kashmir in 1990, that March 1990, I was very happy. I was really happy to get the hell out of there. And I never thought I would have to go back to Kashmir again. But it's the same Mr. Narayanan, because he comes back as DIB. I had been doing counterintelligence for about 11 months, watching Pakistan during that time. And he comes back and says, "You've had enough of a holiday. Come back and take charge of Kashmir again." And after that, Kashmir has really never left me, because Kashmir is a sort of obsession. It gets into your bloodstream. It doesn't leave you. And this is my 5th book. This, of course, is only in praise of Dr. Farooq Abdullah. But each book has been on Kashmir. I never thought I would write or become an author or anything. But again, because I had so much of Kashmir stuffed in my mind, now people are beginning to ask me again, "Am I going to write another book?" I don't know now. I
As a
thought,
publisher, I'm curious. Are you going to write another book?
well, it depends how much you pay me.
Very honest answer.
Thanks a lot, Karthik Sahab. I could go on blabbing. But yeah, there's a little controversy that's been raised about a certain paragraph or a couple of sentences on page 208. I've been misquoted, misrepresented. It's ironical that, I've had 8 or 9 book launches, 4 of them in London, in fact. And at every book launch, Dr. Farooq has been present. At every book launch. Now, for his own book, he was not there.
Mhm.
So that's what Delhi can do to you.
But this friendship clearly hasn't seen its day. It's going to continue.
No, from my side, it has to continue. From Dr. Saab's side, he has to make up his mind when he's coming to Delhi next. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to BIC Talks by Bangalore International Centre. If you liked what you heard, do follow us on social media. Keep up with our programming by signing up for our mailer on the website or leave us a review on Apple Podcast or iTunes. The crew that makes these podcasts possible is S. Sarvana Raj and Ranjit Kumar on sound supervision and production. Artwork is designed by Chandani Venkataraman of Crisscross Design Studio. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. It can also be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org. This is Sunaina Jain signing off on behalf of everyone at BIC.